Hello everybody, my name is Joltius Reiconicus, aka Ren, and today we have some exciting, very exciting news today. So much has happened. For those unaware, on Friday, VCard released a huge and massive announcement that blew my expectations out of the water. They have done so much. VCard had a massive issue on launch with their rules, with their marketing, with so many different things that honestly should not have happened. But luckily for us that they have listened to the community's feedback, they are taking notes and they are striving to do better. And I applaud them for that. Today, we are going to be looking at all of the new changes that they have made, all of the new stuff that they have released, every single little bit and piece from the pros to the cons to everything that this has for the present as well as the future. Now, before I delve into any further of all of the news and info that we have been granted, if you would like to hear mine as well as some other names in this space, like Speed Robo and Stomps, we did a discussion on our thoughts and ideas of what the Friday announcement was going to be before it happened. If you want to watch those, you can go over to my channel on my previous video, or you can go for the full discussion over on Stomps' channel, which I will be linking all of that in the description below, so don't worry about that. But yeah, we have so much to talk about, so we're just gonna hop right into it right here and now. So, VCard just announced their Friday announcement over on their Twitter, and I'm basically just going to go through every single little bit of their bullets here, as well as the other stuff that they have on their other websites, and we're just going to take this piece by piece. VCard just announced this massive update based off of player feedback, everyone in the community giving like their nitpicks and gripes and all of their critiques on it, and they built this whole entire thing based off of that. Once again, I am very glad that they are listening to their consumers, listening to their community, listening to their critiques, everything. It is such an important and vital step into working to help make a product, a good product for your consumers and your community. I'm glad that they are continuing to take the right steps, and I hope they continue to do so in the future. First thing that they have bulleted down here, new rules and mechanics. I'm going to be honest, at the very beginning, I was skeptical of this. I have stated in my previous videos that I was always worried if they announced new rules too early, because making a rule set for a game takes quite a bit. It takes quite a bit of time, quite a bit of thought, quite a bit of testing, all of that. And I was personally worried that if they did something like that too soon, making a new rule set too soon, I feared that it wasn't going to be of proper quality and it was just going to be another horrible mess again. I personally wanted them to take more time to actually flesh out and polish a new rule set or adjusted rule set in the future. They surprised me very much with this. I have read over the new rules, which I will be getting into later on in the video. The new rules, pretty good. They are concise, they have a foundation, they work. It is interesting. Fun is dependent on your perspective of, whether or not you like the strategy in the card game that it has to offer. Me personally, I think it's chill. Little spoiler, it plays pretty much just like Pokemon. But, I'm chill with that. I'm A-okay with that. Overall, the rules, pretty good. Well, again, we'll be going into those in the future. Next up, interactive how to play video. Thank God. This should have been a thing, just like the fixed rule set. This should have been a thing at the very beginning, but hey, better late than never. I'm glad they have it now. Next up, Power Level 8 Mascots and Supports reworked. Now, for those who have already looked at the cards, who have already seen this announcement, who have already looked at the video, have already read the rules, you already know how these have changed. For those of you who haven't, they have changed drastically. When it comes to the previous cards, they were very simplistic in nature, some of them kinda obsolete in their effects just because they weren't that powerful or impactful to gameplay. When it comes to the new cards though, they are actually extremely different. Even when it comes to anatomy, to effects, to all of that, it's very different. Now this gives pros and it gives cons. The pros, it gives way better and way complex and strategic gameplay to the actual game itself. But the downsides are kind of prominent as well, in the sense that when it comes to the people who bought the first set, and I'm talking about the first set, not unlimited, the first edition set, most of those cards have unfortunately become obsolete because of how drastic the changes have been. Specifically on the tweet, it does specify power level 8 mascots and supports. This does not include power level 9s and 10s. So for those of you who got lucky and who got a lot of packs and got some really good rare cards, you can still use those. Those are going to be totally fine. They did not change at all. When it comes to the gameplay though, all of the other cards have been changed extremely drastically and have been errated to the point to where if you were to bring the power level 8s, the mascots and supports, all of these new cards, or rather all of the old versions of the new cards to a modern setting, you would have to have like a constant like list of the new effects to keep track of those if you are going to actually play them. Granted, if the table that you are playing at allows it. Now, I'm sure in like a casual setting, people won't care. If it's like, oh, okay, you just use one of the old arts because you didn't buy any of the new cards, so be it. I don't think people are going to care that much. But in a tournament setting, I could see this being a little bit of debacle just for the sake of simplicity, as well as just like keeping a time management instead of having to constantly look over at notes of like what these effects do or like looking at your phone, etc, etc. But again, those are changes that we will be looking into further later on in the video, but it is unfortunate that a lot of these cards have been almost null and void. Another thing, when I was thinking about rule changes, is I was very much hoping that whilst I wanted changes, I was hoping it wouldn't too drastically impact the current cards out. I was hoping they would be more involved so that way the people who bought the first edition set would not basically have their money wasted, which really sucks for the people who bought the first edition set, because now most of their cards, aside from just having a quote-unquote misprint, even though it's not technically a misprint, pretty much the only benefit it has is as a funny little collectible, as like an error card, which to some people that's still going to be valuable, that's still going to be nice to have. I mean, I'm still going to keep a hold of the cards that I have, granted very few, but all of the value for all those cards, some even for the power level 9 and 10s, is very obvious that all of the value from the first edition set has dropped significantly. Even though we've had a fall with the first edition set, they have released free starter kits. They have released starter decks. That is an amazing thing. This is another thing that they should have had at launch. They should have had this at the very beginning, but I'm glad they have it now rather than never. And to the people who invested and bought the first edition sets, you can actually get a free one when you go onto the GamerSupps website. And I'll be going into that specific topic for later on into the video as well. I know I'm saying, oh yeah, we're gonna set all this info aside, but bear with me here. We'll get to it in a bit. Next up, a TableTop Simulator mod. All of the other VTuber TCGs as of right now, or at least most of them, things like V Royale and Rift Runners, they have a TableTop Simulator mod for their games, so that way people can play for free online and test stuff out on Tabletop Sim. Now GamerSupps has one. That is a very good thing. I'm glad that they looked at their competitors and implemented that into their own game as well. It's very good. This will overall just increase and boost player experience, as instead of just for people who have to rely on the cards or heck even just spend money on them. Now they don't have to worry about it. They can just, as long as they have the game, they can just get the mod and then they'll be good to play online with whoever they want. And then the last and final bit that they have is that the unlimited box, those are going to be fully updated to the new rule sets. Now, unfortunately, this piece of information also does come with some negatives as well. For the people who bought the first edition box, lucky for you, you have the updated cards. Good on you. But for the people who opted out of buying the unlimited cards, kinda got screwed over. Now with the rules being updated, people no longer have any way to access the new updated cards unless they bought the unlimited set when it was in pre-order a couple weeks ago. On their products list page, they do not have any listing for new cards outside of the starter deck. I feel like that is a major blunder. If they were to re-release a new run for another unlimited box set, so that way people who are now more invested into the game, who have an understanding of the updated rules, now have a chance to actually get the updated cards, who know what type of product they're actually getting as of now and in the future, that would be very good. Unfortunately, they do not have that, which really hurts their player base and their marketing. In my opinion, they should do another run of their unlimited set, so that way the people who are now aware of the new rules can actually have access to the cards, as opposed to being did not have hindsight beforehand. You're out of luck. Hopefully they do one in the future, although I'm gonna be honest, I kind of don't expect them to. But if they were to do an unlimited run after hearing people's further critiques on this, and I'm not the only person with this idea. I've been talking with other people. I've been looking at other people's feedback as well. They have the same gripe with me on this, that they have not made a secondary run of Unlimited for the people who want the set now after the rules have been updated. They don't have that, unfortunately. Segueing this into their products, because we have just been talking about that with the potential of new sets that we unfortunately have not gotten. They have new products, they have new merchandise, they have new accessories and collectibles. These look beautiful, by the way. I would love one of this type of style with like buff covers on. That would be a beautiful. This looks chef's kiss. They do absolutely stunning on their accessories. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely stunning. As well as that starter set that I was talking about, you can also buy that too. Again, they do not have any sort of run or rerun for a continuation of Unlimited. They have a starter set, which you can get. It's only like 25 bucks, it says here. I know my head's in the way. It's only 25 bucks. I feel like that's not bad. And this is a 2-in-1. This is 2 starter decks in one. This has 2 different starter decks. Each are a little bit different. They all give a bunch of new cards, all of the cards being updated. I think this is a very, very good step in the right direction. As well as I mentioned before, for the people who bought first edition, you get one of these for free, which is very, very nice. I love that they are giving compensation for their players. Now, I have heard other people talk within the community that just a starter set isn't enough. Again, with my previous gripe, another run of Unlimited would be very, very good, and I agree with that. But I do still think the starter set is very, very good. However, there is one issue that I have with that I saw a lot of people, not only on the Twitter, having questions about, but also in other places. How do the people who bought the first edition set get it? Because they didn't explain that. So for the people who bought first edition set, you will get an email stating, hey, you have been given access, whatever, yada yada, to get a free starter set by going to the website. They don't explain how to though, so I'm going to explain to you all right now how to do that. All you have to do, click add to cart, and then in your cart, it will show that the original pricing is crossed out and it will show $0. I don't know why they didn't explain that, because that is honestly kind of confusing. For someone who doesn't know, just, oh yeah, just click add to cart and then whatnot, and then you'd be good to go. Who wouldn't know that unless they try to experiment? It's like, just say it. Even I didn't know until I just like hit add to cart, and then I just saw it there. It's like, oh, okay, nifty. That is something that they need to specify, in my opinion. One other thing that really raises my brows at this. This is supposed to be a free thing for the people who bought first edition sets. And as this green text says right here, 1 item free. Questionably followed up by with qualifying purchase. What does that mean? Because to me, that sounds like, oh, I can get this free thing, but I have to buy something else. Why is it like that? Why is it worded like that? Granted, I do not know if that is the case or the implication. I don't know if you can just hit checkout and then you'll all be nice and dandy. It puts a sour taste in my mouth because the way it's worded, it makes it sound like you have to buy something else in order to get your free product that you should be getting just for free. You shouldn't have to buy something else. Granted, again, I don't know if that's the case. I'm not saying that that is the case. It's just, it's not specified and it's vague and it's confusing. Why not just say 1 item free, or heck, just having the text 1 item free because of first edition purchase would be fine. I would say just fix the wording on that and then you're good. Specify if they have to buy something else. If they don't have to, then just get rid of this text because it doesn't need to be there if that's the case. Now, if it is the case, that is atrocious and they should be ashamed of themselves. That is horrible. Again, I'm not saying that that is the case. I'm not saying that that is what they are trying to do. But if that is, they need to change that right now. They have already offered to give people a free thing. They should not gatekeep that with you having to buy something else. As of right now, we have talked about what they have announced. We have talked about their products. We have talked about a couple of the pros and cons. But let's look over the rules real quick. What we are going to be doing right now is we are first going to be skimming over, glancing over all of the rules. We're not going to watch the full video. And then we are going to be going to the official rule set on their website and comparing the two and what all of that has to offer. So they first off start by expressing that VCard, it's a simple and fast trading card game, just simple, generic synopsis of what it is and what you'll expect from gameplay, all that. For deck building, they state 50 cards a deck. I am glad that they have a hard set number on this. For this, you have to have exactly 50. Next up, they have a max of 3 copies of each of a power level 8, 9, and 10. Before, this used to be a max of 4, and then it continues to go on stating max of 3 copies of each support and max of 2 copies of each mascot. Unfortunately, some people did have their time wasted when trying to collect 4 copies or whatnot of certain cards. Same thing for like in any other TCG where things get banned or things get limited. That's just a thing that so happens to happen. Your deck can be up to 2 different elements. I personally find this as a very good restriction because now with those restrictions in place, you can't have it to where it's like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you just have a bunch of generic good cards shoved into your deck all willy-nilly just to make it, you know, the most competitively viable. Now you actually have to limit yourself to the elements that you're playing and actually play along with those synergies and those strategies within those elements, which, spoiler, the elements all do different things. All of the elements have their own key features and abilities, and it actually gives them some uniqueness and variety as opposed to them just being copy and paste of the same effect to all the elements. Each of them have their own different types of effects, and I very much like that, which we will be discussing later on into the video. But overall, I do think that the limit of 2 elements is just healthy overall. It's enough to where you can cover your weaknesses, or at least some, without being too reliant on one element, but you still have the ability to just solo one element and do a mono element if you want to. Next up, they express how do you win the game. Simple. First player to 3 points. The game goes by a round basis. You play your cards, you go through your turns, and then after a certain set of turns, you'll conduct combat, and after that combat, the winner gains a point. And then the next round begins. First to 3 points wins. Simple as that. Next, the video continues to further on explain how VTuber cards actually work in the game and how the board states works. And this is actually the first time you see the board state in the video. The way that the VTubers work is you have your active spot, which is where all your active cards go, and then you have your backstage, which is limited to only 4 different VTuber cards. Like I expressed earlier, that after a certain amount of turns, the specific amount being 6, the active VTubers will conduct combat, and then based on the winner, we'll decide who gains the point and what happens in the next round. And then the video further explains how mascots work. Basically, they have a very specific zone, and only one mascot can be played at a time. If you choose to play a new mascot, the old one will be discarded, and then you'll have the new one. Support cards have a specific tag in each of their effects. There's going to be a couple different tags. The first tag is boost. Basically, as soon as you use it, after the effect resolves, you just send it to the graveyard. Next up, you have the tag reinforcements. Basically, it just allows you to, in magic terms, react at instant speed and do whatever miscellaneous effect the card does. And then you have your ally cards. These kind of act like an artifact enchantment for magic or like an equip spell for Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically, you just attach it onto your active, and that's why there's additional space on the active. If you were confused earlier, I was too at the beginning. Those are basically just extra room for your ally cards. So this is the full and entire board state. They have the active slot, the mascot slot, the 4 backstage slots, and then the discard in the deck. Then the video goes on to explain the rules further of the setup. You draw 7 cards, and you have to have 1 power level card in your hand, or else you reshuffle and draw 7. Before, if you didn't get a power level card, you just lost. Thank God they changed that, because Jesus Christ, that was horrendous. I'm so glad they changed it. They just did the same way Pokemon does. Just if you don't get a Pokemon, you just reshuffle, draw a new hand. I'm very glad they did this, because now it's like, okay, now you don't get screwed over by RNG. You can just keep reshuffling. Now, another thing that it does specify specifically about your forced mulligans, you have to reveal your hand. I very much dislike this. If you do not get a power level 8 card in your hand, you reveal your hand, giving your opponent information on what type of deck you are playing and giving them an edge on how to combat and work around that. That is very bad. I heavily dislike that. That should not be a thing. Next, players choose to play a VTuber in the active slot as well as however many they want in the backstage in their respective slots face down, and then they'll both simultaneously reveal them afterwards. When those are revealed, they'll trigger what are called snap trigger effects, which are basically a specific type of effect that procs when a card is played. It will further along explain this into the video, as well as I will go more in depth onto specific card types and effects later on. Next up, we go to how the turn plays out and how it goes. You first off start by drawing a card. Both the first starting player and the second player does this. Next, you get your play actions. You can only play 1 mascot per turn, any number power level 8s. Next up, you can play up to 2 support cards on each your turn. This specifically includes reinforcements on your turn. Let's say you play something and then your opponent plays a reinforcement card on your turn. You can retaliate by also playing a reinforcement card, but that counts towards the amount of support cards you can play during your turn. However, if it's on your opponent's turn, you can play as many retaliation cards as you want. Next, which I am very, very glad they did, they added an evolution mechanic. In the previous rules of the game, power level 8s were pretty much useless except for maybe a few here and there. Power level 9s were pretty much obsolete as well because they do the exact same thing as a power level 10, but weaker. With the new rules though, they actually give incentivization to having power level 8s, 9s, and 10s in your deck. I am so appreciative of that. Another thing about the evolution mechanic is that you can only evolve once per turn. And then they have an additional action. You can choose to discard 3 cards to draw 2 cards. And when you choose to do this action is the only action that you can do on your turn. Now, when it comes to this effect, I saw some people have some words about it. Me personally, I think this is fine because it basically, if you have a bad hand, you can just unnerf your hand because it restricts you to this being the only action you can do. So I think it balances out pretty fine. It's kind of like a pseudo mulligan, but in the middle of the game. It's very interesting. After each player goes back and forth playing their cards and then just passing back and forth, taking their turns, then after both players completing 6 turns, so technically 12 in total, combat will begin. Now, combat, very simple. All you do is just look at the numbers of the total that your active VTuber has compared to your opponents, and then you tally up any additional effects like your ally cards as well as your mascots. Whoever has the highest wins. Whomsoever wins the round, they gain 1 point. After this round, you will continue on to a new round, and first to 3 points wins. When you get to the point that combat begins, if you have no active or backstage VT, you lose the round. If a tie happens, you add the total of your backstage VTubers to the total. Now, it is very important that you do not add all of them. You only add an amount equal to the lowest person's number of backstages. So in this instance, this player has 2, this player has 1, so each player would only add 1 of their VTubers to the power level total. If a tie still occurs after those numbers have been selected, you discard the cards attached to your active VT, return the backstage to the place, and just start a new round. This kind of does make it a little odd because like, oh, well, if you keep getting ties or whatnot, and I could just feel it being slightly finicky. At the same time, I don't necessarily know a fix aside from having both players choosing all of the VTubers that they have in their back row. However, with that, it does kind of make the person who is already winning / have more VTubers just win more, but it would be an additional workaround. However, it would incentivize players to more strategically use their back row as opposed to just dumping whatever that they have in their hand left over on their backstage. Regardless, I think that the tie rule that they have for this is fine. They don't have to change it. It's just something that I think it's fine nonetheless. Now we go on to after combat. Players, after combat, discard their active VTubers as well as any attached cards. Next, they choose whichever VTuber in their backstage, move up to the active spot for the next turn, as well as unlock any cards that were locked in the game. After that, they discard down to 7 cards in their hand and then trigger all echo effects. Echo effect is basically just an effect that procs once you play it and then specifically after combat. The winner of that round goes first on the next round, and then first to 3 points wins, and you just repeat the cycle again. Now, one other interesting mechanic that they have is running out of cards. And the specific text states, if your deck is empty and you need to interact with it, -1 power level to all VTubers you control, and then you shuffle your discard pile back into your deck. This raises a lot of questions and concerns. When it says, if your deck is empty and you need to interact with it, what does that mean? Does that mean whenever you need to draw, shuffle it as well, to look at the top of your deck? What does interact mean in this instance? Does it mean in any way, shape, or manner? The main thing that I hate about this, -1 power level to all VTubers you control. I understand that was kind of like, instead of like dishing out damage to you because there's no like proper damage or life total in this game, it was like put a -1 to all your VTubers. Like, I understand where their head was at when designing this mechanic, but because there is no hard restriction as well as no specification on interact, this makes things really jank. How many times does this quote-unquote interact with your deck trigger? What if your opponent forces you to interact with your deck multiple times? That is a mechanic that can be very, very, very much exploited. And that is super bad. As well as, this does not specify if the power level reduction resets at any point. Now, the fact that you discard your VTuber in the active spot after combat, then that fixes that instance. But this says specifically to all VTubers you control, if your opponent is able to manipulate this mechanic and just continuously minusing your VTubers all at once on multiple stack procs before you actually shuffle your discard pile back into your deck, you could very well just have all of your VTubers be -5 and you can do nothing about it, and that basically just makes you automatically lose the game essentially. They need to specify what interact means. If it were up to me, and I am only looking at this in the very moment that I see it as of right now, if I state something that might also have some flaws or holes in it, so be it. In my opinion, change or specify interact to mean when you draw from your deck at the beginning of your turn, or just draw from your deck in general due to mandatory effects, instead of just being vague and say interact, because that can mean a lot more things than you think. Next, make the minus to power level only to the active. So that way, at the end of combat, it goes to the graveyard anyway, and then that minus won't matter further along into the game. Moving further along, swapping basically makes it to where you can swap a backstage with another backstage positions, or you can swap a backstage with your active spot. And these can only be procced by card effects, whether those be support cards or other cards that so happen to have similar effects. There is an unlocking and unlocking mechanic, which is basically just tapping and untapping. A card does not unlock until the start of the next round, not next turn. I feel like it'd personally be a little bit better if they did it once per turn, or at least specify whether or not something does it once per turn or once per round. I feel like that would bring more complexity and strategy to the game. Now, I understand they are trying to go a bit more simple with this, and they're supposed to be leaning into more simplicity. So if that is their argument, totally fair and understandable. If that's how they want to rock it, A-okay with me. I was just a little confused by it at the beginning. Next up, I expressed this earlier, but there is an evolving mechanic. You can only evolve once per turn. You basically go from a power level 8 to a power level 9, and then later on, a power level 9 to a power level 10. When you go from power level 8 to power level 9, you draw a card. When you evolve a power level 9 to a power level 10, you draw 2. I really do like the mechanic in Digimon. I do think it's very smart of them to use this in their game as well. Next up, we have the elements. Elements work the exact same way as they did before, just giving a +1. One concern that I do have with this: they plan to add more elements in the future. And don't get me wrong, I love that idea. I like that they will be adding new elements. My question is how? With this closed circle, it's just that. A closed circle. How do you expect to mesh in any other elements into this? Now, realistically, looking at the chart that they have as of right now, I could see them doing only a couple things. First, make a new circle in addition to this one. Basically have it like off to the side where the new elements do not connect with the current ones. The issue with this, where do we stop at making just multiple circles or multiple new things? Let's say, example, we had like a triangle over here of 3 different elements. What's stopping them from doing, and then another one that's 2, another one that's 4, another one that's 4, another one that's 2. It's like, eventually that would just get way too overwhelming to keep track of all these different charts. In my opinion, that's a no-go. It's an option, but it's a bad option. The next thing that they could do is just kind of try and shoehorn this in. For example, if they were to attach something here and then have it only be affecting 1 or 2 elements, but not the rest. But if they were to start doing that, it wouldn't be a circle. It would just look aesthetically displeasing. But more importantly, it would disrupt the flow of the chart if you try to just staple or tack on these new things onto the current circle. So you're gonna have to figure something out for that. Whatever they choose to do, I don't know. I just hope that whatever it is, it works out. Next up, we have different miscellaneous card types and effects. These are basically just blocks and stats and text that basically specify when certain things happen and what types of effects happen at a given time. First up, we have Snap. Basically just acts at instant speed in Magic or whatnot, or like a quick play spell. The effect activates when played. Now, one other nitpick that I do have, I dislike the layout for what they have for these effects. They're not in the text box. When I was first looking through the rules and looking at the cards, it made it a little confusing. Instead of the effect being in the text box, it's up here for some reason. I find that a little weird. They should have put this in the text box. That way it's more simpler and easier to read and understand for new players. Again, this is a minor thing, and once you understand it, you understand it, but I still feel like it was a bit of a hiccup is all. Moving on to other effects, there's a specific keyword called lock, which this triggers whenever it is locked, and after combat it will unlock, and then it'll be able to activate its effect again afterwards. Next up, they have passive, which this is basically always on, always accounted for at all times, always checked. Next up, they have Echo. This is an effect that triggers once it is played, and then immediately after every combat. Next up, we have Elemental abilities. In the new rules, they actually have very specific and unique effects limited to those specific elements. That gives them more character and more uniqueness, and I very much like that. First one is Fire. It has Fuel to discard an unattached support to trigger a specific effect. Ash, it triggers if a player has X cards in their discard pile. And then Burn is -2 PL to an opponent's VTuber spot. This is, in quotations, status effect. Basically things that continue to proc or have effect over the game. Next up, Water has Tide effects, which is on low tide, turns 1, 2, and 3. Certain effects proc, and then on high tide, turns 3, 4, 6. Next is Submerge, which prevents allies from attaching to the opponent's VTubers and whatnot, which this is also a status effect. And then they have Undertow, which basically forces an opponent to tap/lock their card until combat ends. Next up, they have Grow, which is effect triggers at the start of the next turn. Next up, they have Decay, which reduces a VTuber's power level by whatever amount is stated after each combat, which is also a status effect. And then Feed, which is +1 to a different VTuber, and it expires after combat. For Platinum, we have Chain, which is if an adjacent to a matching element, whatever effect happens triggers. Next up, we have Bolster, which is basically just giving it protection or immunity from whatever so happens to be targeting it or whatnot. And then there's Coin Pile, which this just says gains +1 per trigger, resets after combat. In the video, it is very vague what Coin Pile means. But in the actual description of the rules on the official website, it explains a bit further. These are basically like tokens or counters, similar to like +1/+1 counters or whatnot in Magic, that just stay on the card, and you can use those tokens or coins to trigger or proc certain effects. And then last but not least, Electric is the only one to have 4 different mechanics. The first one being Jolt, which is triggers if it's the first card played in a turn. Next up, they have Positive and Negative. Positive, it triggers in the active spot, and then Negative is what triggers in the backstage row. Next up, they have Circuit, which is whatever so happens to activate if both the positive and negative effect is on board throughout whatever VTubers cards you have. And then lastly, Aftershock, which triggers at the end of your next turn. And that is all that the video has to show. Overall, I love the new rule changes. They are very good and concise, but again, there are issues, there are flaws, some more major than others that definitely need to be addressed and specified, some even changed, but this is a massive improvement, and I am glad that they have taken the time to change that. I was worried that them announcing new rules this early would mean that, oh, they rushed things and things wouldn't be polished enough. They exceeded my expectations. They did good. I applaud them for that. And last but not least, now I'm going to be doing just a quick little overlook and skim through of the actual official rules on the game guide. First and foremost is on the deck construction rules. It lists everything that it said on the video as well, but one thing that it did not include is must include at least one power level 8 VTuber, which makes total sense because if you didn't have one, you would just be continuously reshuffling your deck over and over again, basically just wasting time and putting you in an infinite loop. Whilst this is not inherently an issue, it did open my eyes to something. If you want to do something silly, you can just have one power level 8 and nothing else. I know in Pokemon TCG Pocket that there is a deck in the game that uses the same principle, being an Articuno deck. Now, is this that big of an issue? No, but it is just a funny little thing that popped into my mind. But one thing that did just now come to my mind, as of recording, that didn't earlier, after the first combat, it's going to be discarded to the discard zone. And then you go to the next round, you're going to be continuously searching through your deck for a new one, but you don't have one. You're just locked. You're just locked again. You're just soft locked. So that is something that they need to fix a little bit as well. How they would fix it, I am not too sure. Yeah, you don't want people getting stuck in limbo, unfortunately. And then one other point that is not expressed in the video nor in the how to play guide on their website, who goes first in a tie? Do they decide unanimously by just a coin flip or a dice roll? Or is it just the person who went first the last round go first again this round? It doesn't express that, which is is interesting. And then last but not least, when it shows the board here on the website, this looks somewhat blurry on the edges to me. I don't know why. Like, the quality of the image looks better on the video. So this is it on the video, and then this is it on the website. And then the last thing that's a bit more important is that when you hover over it, it says click to enlarge. Why does it show the old board? Why is that here? That thing should have been dead and burned in a fire and forgot about. This should not be here. But that's just a little nitpick. It doesn't like fully matter, but still fix it. It has no point in being here. And then last but not least, they have updated their card gallery. They have updated all of the new cards and added it to the website. However, if I go to click a card, it specifies the first edition, which are no longer in use anymore. And then down here, you click the other bubble, and then it shows the current in-use effect. I'm glad that they have both of these here, just so for, I don't know if collectors want to like differentiate the difference in the future. The effect on the new updated card is not updated in the text box at all, as well as have the regular card be the one that pops up first as opposed to the old card. My opinion. And with all of that news info, updates, products, everything that they have newly released, that is all that I have to show you. Those were all of my thoughts and ideas on what they have brought on Friday. I'm glad that they're taking a good and big step in the right direction. Have they fixed everything? No. They still do FOMO marketing. They still have not re-released any reprint of Unlimited set, nor have they expressed any interest in redefining their reprint policy, which is something that they need to do in my and others' opinions. If GamersHubs and VCard want this game to thrive and last, they are going to need to change that. And they have already seen this type of thing and feedback from their community that they know that sooner is better than later, or at least I'd hope so. But I'm glad they're taking steps in the right direction. And hey, all the other VTuber TCGs, they also started out rough. Some of them still are a bit rough. But the fact that VCard, as well as all these others, are still dedicated and still committed to make a change, a positive change, is the important thing. And I'm glad that they are trying. I plan to have discussions and talks with the boys, Robo and Stomps, and probably some other couple people maybe about these new updates with the next coming days, as well as some other topics and other discussions on other VTuber card games. With all of that being said, and all of my time here being done, I thank you so much for continuing to support me, continuing to watch me, continuing to spread the word of what you guys want, what you guys need about these products, what we all want about these products, what our thoughts on them. I love discussing this kind of stuff. I love TCGs, I love VTubers, I love content creation as a whole. Once again, thank you so much for the inspiration and the kind words throughout the comments and the likes and whatnot. I very much appreciate it. I'm never gonna not be appreciative of it. I'm so thankful for each and every single one of you. You make my day every single time. With all my thanks, I hope that you all have a blessed rest of your day, night, evening, dawn, dusk, whatever it so may be for you. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Thank you.